Okay, so we are moving to part 2 of the Showcase 2012 for AEC user demo. And in this part of the demo, I'm going to show you how to bring this mod further down the line while changing materials. We're going to create material alternative. We're also going to create cross-section and save them as position alternatives. We're going to create some animated shot, change the environment, create a storyboard, and I will show you how I output the final presentation, the final video of this whole demo. So I'm going to give you tips and tricks all along and explain you how I was able to record this video so you can turn this into a live presentation. Okay, so I have now opened the Showcase for AEC Step 3, and this is where I start the second step of the demo. So basically in that second step, I am starting by creating material alternatives. So you'll notice that I have all my shots that were saved according to the demo recording, not the presentation that I'm recording right now. So, you know, mine varies a little bit, but this is exactly where I'm at in the demo that I have recorded for you. So here I'm going to press A to call the alternative, and now you have the alternative lineup. Now there's possible that you can create model lineup, material lineup, and positional lineup. We're going to start by creating material lineup and create material alternative. So I'm going to call the material alternative, and before I do anything here, I'm going to save my first material lineup, which is the state that my model is right now. So I'm going to select all my element by pressing Control A. You can also go under the organizer and select everything. And I'm going to press the button Add Alternative, and it's going to give me the first alternative. I'm going to rename that one to make sure that I know which one is that one. This is my original alternative. So now I have my first alternative to start with. I'm going to close my shot menu and press M to open my material menu. Now you see that there's a bunch of these material, and it's hard to know which one are used in your scene or not. Basically, the one that have a check sign are used in your scene, and what I like to do is show only the assigned material, so it's a little bit easier to browse through these material. Now there's two sets of material. Obviously, there's the Showcase material and the Autodesk material. I talk about the Autodesk material because they're new from Showcase 2012, and they are being imported from the FBX model because they were applied in Revit. So this is an important step that you might want to talk to your clients. So you see the list of Autodesk material. Now for the material that are already applied, how do you know which material is what? For example, I know myself that the wood is an Autodesk material because I have applied it myself. But how can you know if you are loading my scene? So at this material, which is the wood exterior, and I'm going to call the properties. Now calling the properties takes a few minutes to load that menu, unfortunately. So I suggest you don't do that live. I'm just going to minimize it so we can see it properly in the view. So you see, it doesn't say Autodesk material or protein material. I often refer it as protein material, which is the code name. So apologies if I am confusing you. Autodesk material, protein material, they're the same. So basically, the presets for the Autodesk material are different than the one from the Showcase material, and you'll get accustomed to it. Basically, they are giving you the same preset that you have in Revit, so you can, you know, use for furniture or flooring, the finish, style. So this is kind of the presets that you have for Autodesk material. They're limited presets. You'll see that if I open a material that is a Showcase material, for example, I'm going to load the property of this one here. You'll see that the presets are different, and I have a much wider range of presets that I have access to. So if you're familiar with presets and you want to have a bit more flexibility, use the Showcase material. Otherwise, stick to the to the Autodesk material. So let's go ahead here and start changing some of these materials. So you can go ahead and select the organizer to select your object, which is a good way to do in a live demo because it helps people understand what you are selecting. Because I'm using a Revit model, I'm going to go down and organize by Revit object model. If I open this, I have access to my list of objects, and I'm going to change the wall for the time being. So I'm going to just maximize the wall, maximize the basic wall, and select all the exterior wall, and these are the wall I'm going to select. So this is how I'm going to change the material here. So let's go ahead and select some of these material that I can change. So for example, So for example, maybe apply a brick, and you'll see that as I am clicking on these material, I get results, direct feedback in my viewport of what these material look like. I like this brick gray. Perfect. I'm going to save an alternative. You need to have object selected in order to save an alternative. And right now I'm only saving the brick alternative, nothing else. So I'm going to add this next alternative and I'm going to call it gray brick. Perfect. And I'm going to continue on my exploration. I know there's a brick down here. You'll see that some of the protein material give you better results than others. So this one is kind of like a nice one as well, as a dark brown. So maybe I want to save this one. And you always know which alternative is activated because of this small ball icon on the corner. It's telling you this is the active alternative. So I'm going to rename that one and I'm going to call it brown brick. So you can save as many alternatives as you want. I know that if I go down to my siding, I will get nice result as well. So let's scroll down to siding. I know that in the siding, I have a nice one in here. Board siding. I know that this one gives me a nice result. The bump is really cool. So I'm going to add this as another alternative. And I'm going to call this one siding. So not that complicated, really cool to show, and basically you can kind of browse, click somewhere in the viewport, get rid of the selection, and you can basically click on the alternative to recall these alternative, and now you have 4 different alternative. Now, let's say, for example, for the brown brick, I would like to change all the red metal as well. You can always add on to your alternative later on in the process. So I'm going to select one of these red objects and I'm going to go select all object with this material. So now selecting all object in my scene, I'm going to reopen my material palette and I'm going to go select a showcase material for that. So showcase extended material, and I'm going to paint, I'm going to use a metallic paint, and maybe I'm going to use a black, for example. So that's going to give me a nice contrastic effect. So that might be nicer with my brown brick. Now, if I save a different alternative, it's only going to save the black metal as the alternative, which might be good, but you might want to add this black metal as part of your brown brick alternative. Really easy to do. I'm going to right click and say add selection to. So I'm adding this specific selection to this alternative. Now I can also select, I can also save only the black metal as an alternative. So I'm going to save that as rename alternative and I'm going to call this black metal. So now you'll see that I have a variation here. So let's go back to the beginning where we had our wood siding. Now if I click on the gray brick, it's only changing the gray brick. If I click on the brown brick, it's changing the brick and the metal elements of my object. And if I go back to the siding, you'll see that, okay, I'm keeping now the black metal that is part of my brown alternative, and I'm only loading the siding because I've only saved the siding in here. So the only element that is changing is the siding. So for example, if you want to have alternative of black metal, so if you want to have, if I go back to my original wood here and I want to see my original wood with my black siding, I can click on my black siding alternative that I have here. So you can play a lot with alternative and set them up the way you want, and then add on to the alternative if later on you want to change some of these alternatives. So this is how you create alternative. Very useful, very powerful to show in a live presentation, and very easy to set up. Okay, so here I have loaded this showcase for AEC step 4, which is where I am in my video, in my demo, not in this recording right now. And these were the steps that I have according to my video. So basically I have some alternative, and my next step will be to create a cross section and save the position of this cross section as position alternative. So cross section, really easy to create. I'm going to press X on my keyboard, and that's going to load the cross section menu, and I'm going to go create cross section. Now if I create a cross section without any object selected, it will create a cross section across all my objects. If I want a cross-section plane to a specific amount of object, I can select these objects and the cross-section plane will be located only on these specific selected object. So because I didn't have anything selected, you see I got a cross-section that is crossing all my object in my scene, which is pretty much what I want. Basically, it's placing the cross-section in the middle XYZ of your scene. So exactly right in the middle. Now you can move this cross-section by displaying the Show Transform Handles. So you can either press H or go to Edit, Show Transform Handle. So you see you have the transformation handle here. So right now my cross section is right in the middle, but you can see that I have my lamp here in the in this room, and I find that a little bit confusing. So I'm gonna lower my cross section a little bit before I save it. So if you press on the arrow of this axis, you get access to this little floating menu where you'll be able to enter numbers. I'm going to enter -5, which is -5 feet, and it's going to lower that cross section a little bit, and it will be lower than my lamp. Therefore, it's going to cut my building to a lower place where I find it a little less confusing. So this is good. I like this position. I can unselect my cross section so it's kind of more transparent and see what it's giving me. I can orbit around, and I kind of like that. So I'm going to save this cross section position. I'm going to select my cross section, and I'm going to create a positional lineup, and I'm going to add this position as an alternative. So again, it's saving the selected object position. So because I am saving my cross section, it's going to save this specific state of my cross section. So I'm going to call this one horizontal. Now, one thing to keep in mind, there's specific properties of this cross section. So if you right click, so the properties of this cross section, you actually have to right click on the plane here under your cross section menu and load the properties. And you see here, by default, it's coloring the outline as white. Now you can color this light outline as red if you want, or any other color that is available to you in order to have something a little bit more drastic. So this is kind of what I'm going to do, and I'm going to just press X. So now you'll see that in here, instead of being white, it's going to be red. Now you're going to be like, oh, well, yeah, but the cross section is red. I can barely see anything. We're going to solve that by making the cross section invisible once we are done positioning the cross section. For now, I'm going to leave it like this, and I'm just going to close the property. So I'm going to select the cross section, and I'm going to rotate it on the Y axis by pressing the little ball here on the rotation, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. So you'll see that it's going to rotate and give me a cross section that is going to be vertical cross section. And again, it's going to position it right in the middle of the building. Now I want that cross section kind of in the lobby. So I'm going to move it on the, and now it's cutting through my lobby, and I like this position. So I'm going to, with my cross section selected, I'm going to add an alternative. Now, before I do this, I'm just going to delete this. You see here on the grass, you see the shadow of my building that is not there. I don't like that. This is kind of like a bug, somewhat a bug, and there's two ways to solve this problem. You can either go to the visual property, the visual style. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to call the visual style here, and instead of showing both shadow and ambient shadow, I'm going to show only the ambient shadow, and therefore the shadow on the ground is not going to be showing anymore. But you don't have any shadow anywhere in your scene. So if you don't want to do that, there's another way around it. So if you want to keep the shadow in your scene, because, you know, I still want this roof to cast shadow in here. So you see, I want to keep the shadow in my scene, but I don't want the shadow on the ground. So I'm going to go under the appearance and call the environment and light shadow. And I'm going to scroll down under the shadow casting for all environmental, and shadow are cast by. And I'm going to change this. It says here on ground and objects. I'm going to make it to only objects. So there's not going to be any shadow cast on the ground anymore. And I'm going to close this, and you'll see that now I still have shadows on my object, but I don't have shadow in my ground. So something to keep in mind. Select my cross section, and I'm going to add that as a next alternative. And I'm going to call this one vertical. 0, 1, because I'm going to save a different position. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe move this cross section 20 feet, and that's going to cut through a different part of my building. So you see here, it's cutting right in front of my lobby, and I like this position, and I'm going to save another position alternative. So now I have 3 position alternative. I'm going to rename that one, and I'm going to call it vertical 0, 2. So now I can go from all of these different position from my cross section. So I'm going to unselect my cross section, and I'm going to go to the horizontal position that is saved. So that's great. Now, but what I got now is I always have a building with a cross section on it. So how do I get my building without a cross section? So that's something that you might want to think about. So I'm going to go back to the horizontal cross section, and basically in order to not have any cross section, you have to move the cross section away from your building. So I'm just going to basically move it away. So I think 30 feet on the Z axis would be fine. It's going to sit above my building and not going to cut to anything. So you see now it's way above my building, so it's not cutting through anything. And I'm going to save this as an alternative, as a position alternative. And now I'm going to call this no cross section. So now I have all the states of my building. Now, the fact that this cross section is kind of red and not too see-through, I don't like it. And my first instinct is to hide the cross section. Now, if the cross section is hidden, it's not cutting through your building anymore. So to make the cross section invisible but not hidden, you're going to press Shift X. And now the cross section is still there, is not hidden, it's just invisible to the eyes. So if I go to, for example, the position that has got the cross section cutting through my building horizontally, I'm still going to have access to that, but I'm no longer seeing the cross section itself now, which is much better. So now I have saved all my cross section positions. So you see I have the nice red effect. So it's really, it's quite visible where that cross section is cutting through the building, which I like. And I have also all the position vertical and all of that. Now you might want to refresh these images, because you see in the thumbnails, you kind of have the visibility of the cross section, and I find that kind of confusing. So I'm just going to pick a nice angle here, and I'm just going to refresh the images, set image. And now it's going to refresh this image, this thumbnail image. And I'm going to do that for all my other cross-section thumbnails. Now you have all these positions saved, and you can navigate to these positions with an alternative with the material alternative. So let's have a look at this. Set my image here. So basically, I'm going to call my horizontal cross-section. And you'll see that if I start changing to the gray brick, it's going to change the gray brick or whichever option that I have, this brown brick here. So I can use a combination of material and position alternatives, which gives you an unlimited access to present your model in different variations. So alternative, again, are really powerful and really cool to show for your live demo. Now, there's a way to animate your cross section, and I'm going to show you that really quickly. Okay, so with my cross section selected, I'm going to call the behavior menu where I will be able to create an animation. So I'm going to press B on my keyboard, and this is going to call the behavior menu. So basically, I'm going to go and create a keyframe animation. And this is going to load me a specific menu. Now you see here, this is the keyframe animation menu. So basically, I'm going to save my first position of my cross section. Like I'm going to add a keyframe. So this is saving the position of my first menu. So see, there's a little keyframe that's been added. And basically, maybe I want this animation to be 8 seconds. And at 8 seconds, where do I want my cross section to be? Well, probably somewhere in the middle of my building. So I'm going to go minus. So now my cross section is kind of low on my building. I like this position. I'm going to add a keyframe. And now I have a keyframe animation and 2 positions set for my cross section. So if I move the cursor at frame, I don't know, 4, it's going to show me where this cross section will be. It'll take a little bit of time, and now it's refreshing and it's telling me where it is. So I'm gonna move again to maybe frame 1.5, and you'll see that the cross section is moving. Now if I hit play, it's not going to show me this nice animation smoothly, because this cross section is cutting through a lot of elements. So basically, you know, it's a little bit too heavy. So, but I've used this animation to output a movie. So I'm gonna keep that behavior and later on use it for my storyboard. So I'm just gonna close that. And again, because I am done with my cross section, I'm gonna select it. And I'm going to press Shift X to make this cross section invisible. I'm going to close the behavior menu, and I'm going to go back to the position where I have no cross section, or that the cross section is above my building, so therefore my building is not cut. And I'm going to start creating some animation next.